and welcome back to Teacup Kitchen. Last week we went old school and made some slow cooker baked apples, and this week I'm trying a little bit of a different approach. I've been working on my latest Disney Days lesson and focused on the movie Moana. So the more I got to thinking about Moana, the more tropical I was feeling. And I decided to choose a recipe this week that would tie into that theme. So this week we are going to make pineapple upside down mini cakes. It's a twist on the traditional pineapple upside down cake, just miniature, because who doesn't love things tiny? And it is a teacup kitchen. Last night I was smart and I tried this recipe before I was going to make it for all of you, and I'm sure glad I did. Helpful hint: always read through the recipe one time because something might sneak up on you that you aren't expecting. For this recipe, it says it's going to make 18 mini cakes and that you're supposed to use a bakery-sized muffin tin. Well, I went digging around and guess what? No bakery-sized muffin tin. Here's what I have. I have a standard-sized muffin tin. This is probably what you have in your house. So because the muffin cups are a little bit smaller, I had to tweak the recipe just a little bit. As we get into it, you'll see what I mean. So the first thing you want to do is prepare your muffin tin. Give it a good spray with Pam. These suckers like to stick, so make sure you're pretty generous with the spray. Also, a standard muffin tin makes 12 mini cakes. This recipe actually will make 24, but for this lesson, I'm just going to make 12. After you've prepped your muffin tin, go ahead and set it aside, but keep it close by because we're going to need it in just a minute. For the first part of the recipe, we're going to make the gooey ooey upside down part. You're going to need 2 cans of pineapple slices. I call them pineapple rings. You're going to need some maraschino cherries. Delicious. Be careful, they'll stain your fingers. You're going to need 2/3 of a cup of brown sugar and 1/3 cup of butter melted. I did mine in the microwave, so it's all ready to go. Now this is where the tweaking is going to be important. When you take those pineapple rings out of the can, they're pretty big. Too big to fit into our muffin tin. So here's what I did. I just took a couple of them at a time, carefully with your knife. I made a cut, and then I cut off maybe 1.5 inches of the ring. So now it looks like the letter C. Let me show you what I mean. Now it looks like the letter C. But when I put it in my muffin tin, I can connect it and it makes a nice ring to fit in our standard muffin tin. So that you don't have to watch me prep all of those. I went ahead and did that ahead of time. So your pineapple, ready to go. Now let's work on what's going to go in the muffin tin first. You're going to take your 1/3 cup of melted butter and your 2/3 cup of packed brown sugar. Remember, packed brown sugar, get it in there because that's the good stuff. You're going to need a small bowl, a whisk, and a spoon. All you're going to do is dump in your brown sugar and your melted butter. Oh, that looks so good already. And now you're just going to whisk it up. The brown sugar will get nice and melty. And this is going to make kind of like a caramel sauce that drizzles over the top of the cake once they bake in the oven. All right, that looks good. Okay, so here's what the brown sugar mixture looks like. Now you need your muffin tin. You're going to take your muffin tins, 1 if you're making 12, 2 if you're going to go ahead and make 24, and just put a little tiny bit of the brown sugar mixture in the bottom of each tin. And I'm going to do this quickly, show you what it looks like. Now remember, if you're doing 24, start with just a little bit of brown sugar. Don't go crazy or you will run out by the time you get to the last cake. Don't worry about the Pam if it's not perfect. There's a lot of butter in this recipe that will also help. And the reason we want to use a lot of butter, besides the fact that it makes this good caramel sauce, is that when we go to take our little mini cakes out of the tins, they won't stay stuck in the pan. All right, so I've got brown sugar mixture in the bottom of all of my muffin tins. Okay, so now we've got the brown sugar mixture in the bottom of our muffin tins, and I'm just going to set that aside for a second. And we're going to grab our pineapple rings. Now, one thing I want you to do when you drain your pineapple rings out of the cans, save a cup of the pineapple juice. We're going to use this a little bit later to give our cake some more flavor. So just drain them and then set that reserved pineapple juice aside. Now you're going to take our modified pineapple rings, and they just lay right on top of the brown sugar. And if they don't fit perfectly, like that one just broke, guess what? Just going to grab it and put it back in. It's all about adapting when we're in the kitchen, finding a way to make it work, even if it's not turning out perfectly. So I'm going to get all of my pineapple rings in there and show you what it looks like. These pineapple rings are going to give our cake so much moisture because there's a lot of liquid in the pineapple rings. All right, last one. Here we go. Now we're getting closer to being a pineapple upside down cake. Here's what they look like now. You can see the brown sugar mixture in the bottom and the pineapple rings on top. Crowning achievement on a pineapple upside down cake is a little cherry on top. Well, right now it's going to be on the bottom, but in the end it's going to be on top. So I took 9 maraschino cherries and just cut them in half. If you want to put them in the rounded side down, so when they come out, the rounded side will be your little cherry on top. All you do is take those cherries and just kind of press them in right into the middle of the pineapple ring. They won't fit perfectly, and guess what? Like I say a million times, it doesn't matter if it's perfect, they are going to be delicious. And I know that because mine weren't perfect last night, but my taste tester said they were excellent. So now we're going to get all of the cherries into our pineapple rings. And we have finished the pineapple upside down part of our recipe. You've got all of your muffin tins with your brown sugar mixture, your pineapples, and your cherries. And we're ready for the next step. All right, now let's get to the cake part of our pineapple upside down cake. I've set aside the muffin tin with the pineapple and cherries and all the goodness in it. Close by, but set it aside because we're going to work on the cake part. Now this recipe calls for a yellow cake mix. So we're going to follow the directions on the yellow cake mix. And mine says I'm going to need 3 eggs, a 1/3 cup of vegetable oil, and a cup of water. Remember that pineapple juice that I told you to save from the cans? We're going to swap out the water for the pineapple juice. So I'm going to use a cup of the pineapple juice. If you don't, that's fine, just use the water, but this is going to give our cake a super nice flavor. Now before I start mixing my cake mix, I want to get my oven going. So I'm going to turn my oven on to 350 so it can start preheating while we mix up the cake mix. I'm going to mix everything in my stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, no worries. Use a hand mixer. If you don't have a hand mixer, no worries. Use your hands. Wait, use a spoon or a whisk, but in your hands. So all you do is dump everything in. So in goes the 1 cup of pineapple juice or water, depending on which one you're going to use, the 1/3 cup of oil, and the 3 eggs. And obviously I cracked my eggs first, and I had my cake mix already in the bowl of my stand mixer. And then we're going to turn this on. Now here's another pro tip for you. Stand mixers like to be a little crazy, and this has a lot of powdery stuff in it. So if I don't want that to go flying all over my kitchen, take a kitchen towel and just drape it over your bowl while you get the mixer started. So I'm going to put the mixer on low, and anything that would fly up and into my face or all over my kitchen is now going to be underneath this towel. Look at that, like magic. So you're just going to mix your cake. It's okay if it's a little bit lumpy, it's not a big deal. Maybe 30 to 45 seconds, depending on what speed you have it on. I like to turn it up a little bit once it gets going, just to really make sure all the ingredients are incorporated. That looks just right. All right, so now we've got our prepared muffin tins, we've got our cake mix. Let's put it all together. All right, we're at the final stages. We're almost there. I've taken my cake mix off of my stand mixer, and I'm going to grab my muffin tin. For this part, you might want to grab a 1/4 cup measuring cup, because all you're going to do is take a scoop of the cake mix, and it just goes right on top. So about a 1/4 cup should fill up the rest of your standard sized muffin tin. Now remember, this is a lot of cake mix, and we talked about the fact that it could make up to 24 of these smaller sized or 18 of the bakery size. So I'm only making 12, so I'm going to have a little bit extra, but that's okay. You can bake up some cupcakes or make more of these if you'd like. Okay, almost there. It's starting to look like pineapple upside down cakes. Notice that I'm spilling all over the place because I'm kind of a messy cook. Before we put this in the oven, I am going to wipe that off because if you don't, it might get a little burnt on top and then it's really hard to clean. So my muffin tin looks pretty good. A little bit more in this guy. You want them pretty full. They aren't going to rise up too crazily, so you want them, you know, pretty full to the top of the muffin tin. All right, I'm going to take my towel and just wipe off these little spills I made. Perfect. All right. This is what it looks like before it goes in the oven. Now the recipe calls for baking these for 20 to 24 minutes. But I found last night, because we're using the smaller size muffin tin, they only needed to be in there for about 15 minutes. So here's my advice. Set your timer for 15 minutes, peek, check on them. If they're golden brown on the top, they're ready to go. If they're not, you might want to give them a couple of more minutes, but I think 15 minutes should do the job nicely. All right, let's get them into the oven. Now you've got 15 minutes, go clean your kitchen. All right, welcome back. It's been 15 minutes. My timer went off. I checked my cakes and they looked perfect. I took them out of the oven and I let them cool in the pan before I did anything to them for about 5 minutes. Here is what they look like now. Look at this golden brown deliciousness. Now, of course, we can't see the pineapple upside down part yet, but the cake part sure looks good. So before we see what they look like with the final reveal, we need to get them out of this muffin tin. I'm going to be using an offset spatula, but you could just use a regular old butter knife for this next part. You're going to take either your little spatula or your butter knife, and you're going to go around the outside edge of each of your cakes. Okay? I did mine one at a time. I went around one and then I flipped it. If you want to try to do all 12 at once, put your cookie sheet or a cutting board on top and flip them over and see what happens. Be a kitchen daredevil, no judgment here. After you loosen one, you're going to then very carefully tip over your muffin tray so that it pops right out. Now, I don't want to take the time to show you me doing all 12 of my pineapple upside down mini cakes, so I've done some already. Are you ready to see what our pineapple upside down mini cakes look like when they are all said and done? Dun 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 dun! Beautiful! Look at these little pineapple upside down mini cakes. You see the golden brown cake on the outside, the pineapple ring on top, that brown sugar melted down and made them nice and moist and delicious, and there's our little cherry on top. So they are miniature, they are tropical, and they are delicious. I hope you enjoy making them, and even more than that, I hope you enjoy eating them. See you next time.